Afternoon, council members, and good afternoon to the listening and viewing public. As this is our last meeting of 2024, I would like to take a few minutes at the start of this meeting to look back at our work and accomplishments over the year. Despite a number of challenges, the council has managed to complete a variety of work items this year. However, in accordance with the National Conservation Act, many of these items still require Cabinet's final approval and consent. I will start with the fact that notwithstanding Cabinet's approval in 2021 and 2022 of the addition of a number of parcels of land to our protected areas, and that although the protected areas orders have been drafted for these parcels as required under Section 7 of the National Conservation Act, these orders have not yet been issued or gazetted by Cabinet. The Cabinet-approved protected areas ensure sustainable public access to some of our environmentally and culturally notable areas such as Sand Key in South Sound, Tarpon Lake on Little Cayman, and Hemington Forest in Cayman Brac. Some less accessible but no less environmentally important parcels in the Central Mangrove Wetland and the Salina Reserve on Grand Cayman and the undeveloped eastern interior woodland of Little Cayman were also approved for protection. Protected areas are a critically important strategy to aid us in addressing the double threat of biodiversity loss and climate change. As such, the parties to the International Convention on Biological Diversity, which includes the UK and by extension the Cayman Islands, in their most recent meeting at the end of last year agreed a target of protecting 30% of land by 2030. It is therefore extremely important that we are focused and deliberate about establishing protected areas that include representative examples of the range of native habitats which exist on our islands for the benefit of future generations. Accordingly, we await Cabinet's issuing the protected area orders for these important parcels at their earliest opportunity. In accordance with Section 17 of the Act, the NCC is also charged with formulating and adopting conservation plans for each protected species whose range includes the islands. Section 17 sets out a comprehensive process to be followed before conservation plans can be formally adopted, which includes public consultation and final approval by Cabinet. Today, we will consider formal council approval of the conservation plan for Cayman sage, which may be extinct in the wild but has been saved in cultivation. We expect this will join the conservation plans for wild sea turtles and seabirds and the proposal to enable the management of land crabs by listing them on Part 2 of the Protected Species Schedule under the NCA, all of which are pending Cabinet's final consent. Management recommendations contained in the conservation plan for our native seabirds include measures to address predation of nesting adults and chicks by feral cats and other predators, predator control activities on booby nesting habitat on the bluff on Cayman Brac, designed to protect nesting adults and fledgling seabirds have been very promising, have had very promising results with fledgling success increasing from only 12.5% in 2021 to 77.8% in the 2023 nesting season when predator control activities commenced. The DOE continues to collaborate on this very important work with the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds and other international experts in this area by way of a UK-funded Darwin grant. The conservation plans which the Council and the DOE have produced based on this work will help to ensure that these beautiful native animals and plants will be around for the benefit of future generations of Caymanians and as a means for all Caymanians now and in the future to connect with their environment and the environment of their forefathers. Under delegated authority from the National Conservation Council, this year the DOE provided recommendations and guidance on the potential environmental impacts associated with approximately 663 proposals and projects. This consultation procedure, which is outlined in Section 41 of the Act, is the means by which government entities are required to consider the impacts of their decisions on our natural environment before those decisions are finalized, so that any recommended mitigation measures can be fully taken on board. Additionally, the Environmental Assessment Board, which is a subcommittee of the NCC, was involved in the management and review of 5 environmental impact assessments, all related to major infrastructure projects being proposed either by private sector, such as Port Zeus, or public sector entities, the East-West Arterial, 3 airport projects being considered by the Cayman Islands Airports Authority, 1 each for the Owen Roberts International Airport, Charles Kirkconnell International Airport, and Little Cayman Edward Bodden Airport. The draft environmental statement, which summarizes the findings of the EIA for the proposed East-West Arterial project, is scheduled to go out for public consultation in January 2025, followed by the required public consultation on the draft terms of reference for the Little Cayman Airport in February. Unfortunately, there's a narrative being pushed by some that provisions in the NCA are slowing down economic development and causing an imbalance between conservation and development. Those who promote this narrative have concluded, erroneously from our perspective, that amendments to the NCA which seek to redress this perceived imbalance are urgently required. However, as the Council has repeatedly pointed out, the facts simply do not support this narrative. In addition to the rate and scale of physical development taking place in the country, which is blindingly obvious to all residents, in the months of October alone, the DOE, under delegated authority of the Council, processed 84 planning applications from the CPA for review under Section 7 of the Development and Planning Act, with most of the applications being reviewed within the agreed timeline and only a few requiring consultation with the applicants to clarify questions. 1 application was recommended for refusal on the basis that it does not meet coastal setbacks and is adjacent to a marine protected area and turtle nesting beach. 3 applications were recommended for refusal based on administrative matters as they were over Crown property and thus required a coastal works permit rather than planning permission. There were no direct refusals, and conditions of approval were directed in 4 instances. Recently, we have seen an increasing number of applications submitted for review because the CPA have issued a directive to the Planning Department to circulate all planning applications to the DOE under Section 7 of the Development and Planning Act, regardless of their significance. We continue to encourage the CPA to utilize the Council's guidance notes to assist them with identifying which of their applications would likely cause adverse environmental effects, and therefore require review under Section 41 of the National Conservation Act. By following the NCC's guidance notes, the CPA can reduce the unnecessary delay for their clients and increase the fairness and consistency between applications. The false narrative that the National Conservation Council and the National Conservation Act would somehow restrict developments was a prevalent feature of long-standing objections to the NCA raised by certain vested interests before it was passed into law. Unfortunately, those objections have been kept alive throughout the now almost 11 years of the NCA's implementation, along with the continued scaremongering that having protected species present on one's land will somehow result in automatic refusal of all development. As we have seen, even if there is an endangered iguana on the land, permission can still be and has been issued for its development. The Act and the Council promote informed decision-making and sustainable development that requires environmental concerns to be considered by decision makers, just as they would be expected to consider social and economic issues. However, this approach does expect all parties to participate in a process of informed decision-making. For example, before engaging in major private or public sector projects, decision makers must actively seek to understand all the benefits as well as the costs of each proposal, and they ought not to rely on the anticipated benefits put forward by the proponents. The NCA Section 41 reviews are a good example of how and why the Council is able to function more efficiently through its unique hybrid structure, with technical and scientific expertise being provided by 3 government departments, as well as by appointed council members. It is our understanding that the proposed amendments to the NCA, including removing the current requirement, include the current requirement in the NCA for 4 of the 8 cabinet-appointed members of the NCC to have relevant scientific or technical expertise. Our view is that such an amendment would place the Council in an untenable position with respect to to being able to carry out its duties and fulfill its legal mandate to promote nature conservation in Cayman. Preserving native species and healthy natural habitats for the future benefits of all citizens of the Cayman Islands. Unfortunately, this hybrid structure seems to engender a degree of public confusion, such as the recent statement by an elected official that the Council is chaired by the Director of the Department of Environment, despite the Council's general meetings, such as this one, having been open to the public and publicly broadcast since 2014, when the Council commenced its work. Section 2 of Schedule 2 to the Act requires that Cabinet appoint the Chairman of the Council and 8 of the Council's 13 members. No civil servant has ever functioned as chair. In fact, if for some reason Cabinet wished to remove the 4 ex officio members of the Council, in other words, those civil servants appointed by virtue of their posts as voting members, this can be achieved by order of Cabinet under Section 3(8) of the Act, with no amendment to the Act being required. It would, however, be very unfortunate if the various technical agencies involved in the Council were separated from the Council, as it would simply introduce increased consultative delays and bureaucracy, which the Council was deliberately crafted to avoid. With all this in mind, it is this Council's strong belief that no amendments to the National Conservation Act are needed or warranted at this time, as the relevant provisions of the Act simply ensure that all government entities function in a manner which is designed to promote the long-term sustainability of our natural environment and resources, while making decisions in relation to national development projects and plans. However, should the government decide to move forward with the amendment bill, the Council strongly recommends that every effort is made to ensure that robust public consultation takes place on the proposed amendments. It is also expected that at this time, major undertakings and decisions which will shape our country for decades to come will be made with climate change in mind. There is no question that climate change is occurring, and we are beginning to see the predicted impacts of more weather-related disasters in the Caribbean and around the world on a sadly more frequent basis. Globally, coral reef ecosystems are under severe threat from man-made impacts such as pollution, as well as from the devastating impacts of warming and more acidic oceans. Despite the high level of protections offered by our world-class marine protected areas, Cayman's coral reefs have not escaped. This year, the DOE has reported significant declines in live coral cover around the 3 Cayman Islands associated with the global coral bleaching event which took place last year. And this has been independently verified for the reefs of our sister islands by studies carried out by other organizations, such as the Central Caribbean Marine Institute, CCMI, aided by the generous donations from the Foster's Group of a coral spawning facility. The DOE has already begun to investigate whether there are any coral restoration strategies which might assist our coral reefs to cope, while the countries of the world decide whether or not to increase their ambitions in relation to curbing greenhouse gas emissions and arresting the progress of predicted impacts of climate change. We were therefore heartened by the government's promotion and adoption of the National Climate Change Policy earlier this year, and Council will continue to support all government agencies in applying climate change considerations in national decision-making now and in the future. This will require Cayman learning from our past and planning for a more resilient and sustainable future for our natural and built environment. We hope that we will see this play out in solutions to challenges such as coastal setback increases combined in areas such as 7 Mile Beach, with changes to the planning legislation dictating how coastal setbacks are measured. Unfortunately, due to a combination of climate change impacts and poor decision-making in the past, which approved development too close to the active beach, especially structures such as seawalls and pools, as well as irresponsible management of sand resources during construction and after storms. It is also evident that we must now consider beach nourishment as a short-term solution in economically important areas such as the southern end of 7 Mile Beach. Finally, today's Council will consider a number of initiatives where public input and review was invited. In 2025, public consultations mandated by the Act will continue. We therefore appeal to you, the general public, to help you to promote the long-term sustainability of our islands and to protect our vulnerable species and habitats by continuing to actively engage in these consultation processes. We look forward to hearing you make your voices heard on all of the important conservation issues that affect your future and the future of our beloved country. You have a quorum?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum with apologies from Lisa Hurlston, who is traveling today.
Thank you.
Interests.
Before we start the main agenda items, if any members have interest in any of the matters under consideration this afternoon, could they kindly declare those now?
I think I might have, Mr. Chair, under any other business. I think that's the motion that I had recused myself from previously, so I will do the same.
Thank you.
And I declare an interest as well, sir, but nothing direct, and as recording secretary, I have no actual conflict, so I don't have to recuse myself unless council decides otherwise.
Okay, thank you. Any of our online council members? Not, could we continue with the agenda?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The next item for council, the first item for council then would be the confirmation of the minutes of the last working group, of the last general meeting, which was on the 19th of June this year, and was broadcast as normal. The minutes have been circulated to members previously. If anyone had anything they wanted to raise now that they hadn't had a chance to raise before, or just to move to accept.
I move we accept.
Thank you.
Ms. Patricia,
I move we accept.
you move to accept. Thank you, madam.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
And then, so the only thing we had arising from those minutes was that the fish pot and the spare gun license, which is considered at that time, has been issued after members of council met with the applicants as council wanted to have done. So that's all finished.
Okay, thank you. So,
The DO reports are just, we have ongoing public education outreach on a few issues. It's just general information stuff. It's nothing in particular specific for council actions happening right now, but just general outreach going on. Nothing specific either for climate change or licensing reports at this time.
Mr. Chair, I can take the Environmental
you.
Assessment Board updates.
please.
So for the East-West Arterial, we have now received all draft chapters of the environmental statement, and members of the EAB are busy reviewing, completing the reviews for those chapters. It's our hope that we complete those at the end of this week, and that the consultants then would receive our input and incorporate the input from the EAB review team in the final chapter draft environmental statement. Before that goes out for public review, now scheduled for the week of the 20th of January. So we're very close to completing this EIA. We simply have to complete the review, get the final draft in and out for public consultation, and then obviously any public consultation comments will be taken on board at that time. So that's the East-West Arterial. Port Zeus, the EAB received a draft terms of reference from the consultants, and we fed back to those consultants on some amendments that were required, and we've now received an updated version of the TOR. We simply have to sign off on that. So that is something that we're hoping to get done also very shortly. In terms of the airports, I'm happy to say that we actually submitted the EAB's review of the terms of reference for the Little Cayman Airport this morning. So that is scheduled to go out for public consultation sometime in February, once the consultants have incorporated the input from the EAB. The consultants have also informed us that we should be receiving the first version of the terms of reference for the Owen Roberts International Airport expansion next week. So we look forward to that. It is unlikely that the EAB will be able to review those terms of reference simply because members of the EAB will be off for Christmas holidays, et cetera, until early January. So everything is continuing to move forward with all of the environmental impact assessment projects.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the next thing for council would be the ratification of council's decisions related to the judicial review of the CPA regarding the bond crep after the fact approval. These were the various decisions that council took, but didn't wish to be public at the time to try and facilitate the ongoing discussions at the time. The first one was to do the letter before action. That decision was taken on 13th March 2024 at a council work group session. Then on 10th of April 2024, council considered and agreed to put in the application for leave for the JR to keep the JR moving. And then the 29th of May 2024, council confirmed to proceed with the judicial review, noting that that would remain the best way to try to resolve council's impasse legally. And so it is therefore proposed to council today, sir, that council ratify the decision to request the council's independent legal advisors to submit a letter before action on the decision taken by the CPA, that the council ratify the decision to prepare and submit the application for leave to judicial review, that council ratify the decision instructing the council's attorneys to take the necessary actions to continue the judicial review as necessary, and that council will continue to consider any future questions related to these issues in closed work group sessions in order to promote the positive diplomatic resolution of the issues while maintaining to the greatest extent possible council's options to pursue positive resolutions by all appropriate and necessary means, and within the constraint that the council's decisions are all ultimately public decisions, i.e. would be, if not taken at the general meeting, it is ratified at the general meeting. That is the information that was circulated to council in advance of this meeting.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I will move the motion. And need a seconder.
I second.
Thank you.
It would just be, sir, if any members wishes to speak to it or move straight to the vote.
Okay, let's give a moment and then take the vote.
Okay, you need to call your vote, I think.
Okay, we have a Vote then, please. All those in favor?
Favor.
In favor.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Tim Austin, DOE in favour.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to abstain, given my involvement in preparation of documents,
Right.
etc.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll also abstain. Thank you.
Any against?
Rollstone, vote in favour.
Thank you, Frank. Any votes in against? I did, thank you. Thank you.
Did you hear me?
I did hear you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Brian
Critchlow abstain.
Thank you. Are there any voting against? I think not.
Thank you, sir. That's everyone's vote.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda for council, Mr. Chairman, through you, is the protected areas nominations of 2024. We have the protected areas nominations public consultation report for which was circulated to council members. The nomination period ran from 22nd April through 31st of July. It was launched via social media, reporting a dedicated page on the NCC website, which laid everything out, social media posts, as well as another advertisements. This is all in furtherance of the Conservation Act, providing that there can be public nomination of areas for protection, and council having previously decided to make a push for that every 2 years so that any members of the public who wish can be involved. Obviously, nominations can be taken at any time, but this push is done to try and help manage things. One of the items that we made sure to make public aware of this time was that they did not need to resubmit nominations for previously nominated areas, because the nominations don't fall away once they've been made. They remain there and be sort of kept in review every time. We also, as part of that time period, organized a webinar on Nurtured by Nature in collaboration with the Wellness Center, because we timed, as part of Earth Week, is when we timed everything out. This was done by both the Department of Environment, our terrestrial resources manager, but also a counselor from the Wellness Center, who talking about the importance of nature and natural areas for people, to try and encourage people to think of these not just as what's great for the environment, but also what's great for the people. We received two nominations by mail or by email, one for pygmy blue butterfly habitat in Barkers, so essentially a renomination again of the Barkers area, and one for the Laguna del Mar Lagoon. All of the areas that people have inquired about were already sort of on the list of areas to consider. So what we would, for council to consider, would be that council accept the 2024 nominations as having been conducted in a way that council is happy with, and accept the nominations report. And we'd also like to propose to council that taking into account the areas previously nominated and considered by cabinet, and the areas nominated in 2024, and the areas considered by council previously, that council may wish to direct the Department of Environment to prioritize protection in activities in 2025 and 2026 on the following areas depending on landowner interest. There are 8 areas approved for protection by Cabinet in 2021 and 2022, but still pending final designation by Cabinet. And then, based particularly on the 2020 Council's 2022 review, should landowners be willing to open to it, the following areas would be prime for protection. The Ironwood Forest in Grand Cayman, both Crown and, if landowners are open to it, private areas. Cayman Brack Drive Forest and Karst shrubland, including adjoining seabird nesting areas. Grand Cayman Mangrove Wetland and Parrot Habitat. Muddyfoot's Pond in Little Cayman. Little Cayman Rock Iguana Habitat. Barker's National Park area that still hasn't come into the national park. Malporta's Pond in Grand Cayman. Grand Cayman Iguana Habitat. And Little Cayman, the Jackson Pond and North Coast Wetlands. Council may also wish to consider that proposing to Cabinet that in addition to the normal budget and process for conservation land purchases, a second process be created for the purchase of properties that are more expensive than can normally be afforded. Obviously, land purchase, whether normally or through this additional process, would only be from willing sellers. But sometimes, whether because of the size of the individual parcels available or the land value or both, some of the areas nominated for protection will cost more to purchase than would otherwise normally be budgeted for conservation land purposes for an entire year. So where potentially willing landowners are identified, proposals can be made to Cabinet for approval in principle to purchase to allow a good faith negotiation to then occur with the landowner. So that we're not talking to somebody about potential purchase when we really can't afford it. Proposals would include the possible use of the protected areas, for example, as a national park or a wilderness reserve, as would be set out in a draft management plan for the area, which under Section 10 of the National Conservation Act, these management plans are drafted with public consultation only after the land is acquired and protected. So any possible uses of the land identified in advance would just be draft only. And final funding approval for purchase of these larger areas would still need to be made through the normal budget process, and the purchases and protected area designation would need to occur through the process of the National Conservation Act. So we'd like to put that out for council to consider, sir.
Okay, thank you. Have somebody propose a motion on that regard, please?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to so move.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder?
This is Steve, I'll second it.
Thank you, Steve. We have a vote on it?
I support the motion.
Thank you.
In favor?
Mr. Chairman, I'll abstain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As will I. I'm involved in preparation of documents, etc.
Frank Rollstone, I vote in favor.
Thank you.
Lucille Seymour, I vote in favor.
Thank you, Ms. Lucille.
Steve Brokaw, the secretary, just to confirm I'm in favor.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Tim Austin, I'll abstain, given involvement.
Thank you.
So that's 5 for.
Abstain as well.
Okay, thank you. I think that's everyone then?
Yes, sir, that's everyone.
Okay, thank you.
So Mr. Chairman, through you, the next new matter for council to consider is the Salvia caymanensis Conservation Plan. That is the Cayman sage. And once again, this went through public consultation. So the Cayman sage is a small flowering herb that is only found in Grand Cayman. It was originally described from 1900. George Proctor, when he did his seminal book on the plants of the Cayman Islands, established it as a unique species. It was suspected to become extinct because no one could find any of it. It was rediscovered growing in the road verge on the Queens Highway in 2007. Although this wild population has apparently died out, seeds collected from it and grown at the Queen Elizabeth II Botanic Park have now generated multiple generations of this plant in very large numbers. These have been planted out in the Botanic Park, and through programs started sort of before the Conservation Act even, they're in other locations around the island as well, in private gardens and other places. A species conservation plan was drafted by the Department of Environment's Terrestrial Resources Unit with the aim to restore a self-sustaining population of Cayman sage in the wild and to ensure an abundant population in cultivation that protects the genetic diversity of the species and serves as a reserve during the restoration phase and beyond. This plan went out to public consultation. That ran from 30th of May through 30th of June. We did a media release in the news and newspapers, dedicated page on the NCC website, as well as social media posts about it, and putting out to make it easier for the public to feedback. That all linked to a public consultation survey, although people were very welcome and invited to write in their opinions directly if they wished. We got generally strong support for the conservation plan for the sage, but particularly, the general support for native species, for saving endangered native species. There was some lack of support, but the reasons that person gave tied very closely to a misunderstanding that we were able to deal with in them. But there was one other strong, shall we say, or well-worded objection sent in regarding around the possibility of people accidentally ending up with protected species on their property unintentionally and that causing problems. We updated the draft plan, which is what was recirculated to council to try and address that concern. And so we'd like to put for council's consideration the report of the consultation that the consultation was done in a manner that council is happy with, and so you accept the report. And we'd like to put the amended draft conservation plan on the table for the council to consider, and depending on what council decides on that if council accepts the draft plan, that we submit the amended draft conservation plan together with copies of all the written objections and representations received to the ministry for the approval of the cabinet, and that council would adopt and promulgate the amended draft species conservation plan for Salvia caymanensis if, within a period of 60 days from the date of submission, the council has not received written notice from the cabinet setting out reasons why the plan as submitted should not be adopted, but that all would kick in if and after council decides to adopt the plan as circulated in advance.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we accept the conservation plan for Salvia caymanensis, Cayman sage, as proposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I just speak to
Certainly.
a few comments that we had and that we've previously shared with Secretary, and I think onward to yourself, Mr. Chairman. I mean, firstly, we appreciate that the document was amended quite significantly from version 2 to the version 3 that we now have before council, and I think the latest version has some very good definitions. In fact, it has a whole additional section, so we appreciate that. But we do still have some outstanding concerns, and I think the current version that we have, we can't, I say we, Department of Planning, can't support that at this time. And I can just kind of briefly summarise what those concerns are. The first of which is, I think we're fundamentally struggling, or we're unclear on the need to protect the species when it appears to have died out in the wild. And so the known quantity of the species is actually the cultivated stock, which is the not protected version of the plant. And so the inclusion of protection measures relating to the control of take places of risk and threat to landowners for a species that, as is acknowledged in the conservation plan, is thriving in large numbers at Botanic Park. And so this kind of relates to the second concern we have, which is that it remains difficult to differentiate between cultivated and natural wild stock of the plant. And so with those protection measures in place, it's a very important distinction to make, and it has really quite significant implications on whether on a piece of land you have what is a cultivated plant, what is a wild plant. And so in our view, the conservation plan just needs to be clearer about the details and the processes involved in how you make that determination, how you differentiate between the two versions effectively, or the origins of the plant. So I could get into some kind of theoretical examples of the concerns we have, but I think ultimately, based on these concerns, we would respectfully request that we take some time to just revisit the document and seek to address those concerns, if that would be possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I can just point out to planning that as it stands, Salvia caymanensis, the Cayman sage, is already on part 1 of the species, the protected species under the NCA. So right now, without the plan, if anyone were to deliberately do something to it's protected at all times, essentially. What this plan is trying to do is to create pathways to ensure that people don't actually get into issues with Salvia caymanensis on their land, by defining, for example, that cultivated plants are not protected, that the protected specimens are basically any discovered populations of truly wild stock with no reasonable likelihood of being from cultivated stock. Basically that it doesn't rule out the fact that there's a possibility that we have as on yet undiscovered populations or natural populations reappearing from the germination of currently dormant seeds in the wild, because we don't actually know very much about how this plant survives. It seems to have, seed stock seems to have survived for many, many years. I don't think that there's a great deal of risk of the plant spreading it. The seeds are not windborne. They're quite heavy and dense, and they fall to the ground, and they're generally buried by insects and so forth. So it's not looking, it's not as if we're going to have a windborne seed spread to anywhere. So I think that, although I think I understand what your concerns are, mean, it is an endemic species. We have a responsibility to try to restore it if possible. We're only talking about restoring on either protected land or land where the public have given permission, either through a conservation agreement or some other agreement. We can put the plant, on their land, and then that would basically constitute a protected, restored population. So I feel as if the plan addresses your concerns, but I don't know how other council members feel.
Mr. Chair, just a matter of clarifying the elucidation of the council member from planning. I wasn't sure whether he was influencing us not to vote, or he was making a point of order, or what was he clarifying, or was he voting no? I'm not sure if you could clarify that for me.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my understanding is we hadn't reached the point where we were voting. I was just expressing some concerns that we'd previously shared with the Secretary and the Chairman, but obviously hadn't shared with council members. So I just wanted to explain those concerns.
I just make a point of clarification. I did receive a request from planning through yourself. I received it early this morning, and at that point, this item was already on our agenda for the day and did have other matters to consider. So I thought it best that we discuss it as we're doing now at this meeting. Also, you said you had previously made these concerns of planning known. What was discussed in this council previously was the public consultation, of which I think there were 10 responses, and 9 were in favor and 1 was against. And I reviewed those today, thinking that plannings was among those. It was not. I was later, my attention was drawn to the fact there was a final appendix on that list that included the letter from planning, which I had not seen before and was not, I don't recall it ever being brought to the attention of this council. I won't say it was not provided in a long list of documents, but it was news to me this morning. And as such, we're having this discussion now, as I think is perfectly appropriate. I don't know if any other council members would recall this objection from planning. I certainly did not see it.
No.
Nor do I, but I think, Richard, conservation plans, management plans, in their essence, are trying to deal with comments such as planning has made. And in their absence, we have this vacuum in which we don't know how to manage these species. We don't know how to respond to the public's desire to cultivate. And we don't even know if there are other populations out there yet to be discovered. I mean, there's all these questions which will remain unanswered without a conservation management planning process in place. So, I mean, I think this is the right step in order to address planning's comments and future ones. Without a management plan, we can't really do anything.
So through you, Mr. Chair, can I just add one sort of final comment, really, just to kind of wrap up? I think our concern in this situation is, in my mind, this kind of presents quite a unique situation where we're seeking to protect a species that, on the face of it, is extinct, but we're cultivating, we're effectively generating new stock of it. And I think our concerns really relate to the fact that those stock, in some way or form, some theoretical way, may end up in lands, and without, as I said, that mechanism to determine what the origin of the plant is. It's not as if there's a register, we're not mapping them. There is a risk that a plant that's come from cultivated stock in Botanic Park is on a piece of land that's otherwise untouched, and so some years down the line it's considered wild plant when actually it's come from the cultivated stock. So I think that's really the crux of our concerns, and it's if we could just see a way or include a way that just kind of clarifies that kind of relationship or that concern we have, then we might be able to move forward. But I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, maybe I could respond quickly to that.
Certainly.
I don't feel that, well, I know that if there were ever any worry or question about the sort of the provenance of a species on a piece of land, the DOE would have no interest in prosecuting anybody or taking any kind of legal action as we're charged with the enforcement of the legislation, unless we had absolutely clear evidence that, you know, this was some kind of wild population that had been designated as such and that we were seeking to protect. So I don't think that this idea that specimens found on land would somehow blight the land of a private individual. I think that those concerns are, in my mind, unfounded, because the DPP and the DOE would simply not be pursuing prosecution for something that we didn't have hard evidence about.
We have no genetic studies.
No, I mean, that's, as Ian is saying, that there's so many questions still about
Yeah.
this plant. We need to understand it, and we need to understand, you know, how it works. How does it survive? And how do the seeds survive for such a long time? All of this, and we need to try to encourage gardeners and other people to put the plant under cultivation so that we can maintain genetic diversity of the population, you know?
I think planning's idea of having a registry of cultivated plants is a good one, and I would be in favor of supporting that amendment in the next iteration. But I think we need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And we'll never get it perfect today, but I hope we'll get it closer to being perfect tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I would urge us to at least approve the amended plan and to continue to amend with recommendations such as planning departments about creating a registry so we know, in fact, the provenance of the sage. Is
Yeah.
it cultivated or is it wild?
Yeah.
We do need to know that.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
And so, dear Mr. Chair, I do approve the amended plan, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Lucille.
Richard, does that satisfy you in any sense that there is a process through which to amend a conservation plan? In the absence of a plan, we have no ability to act.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I feel like I'm speaking for colleagues here, but I guess I'd have more comfort if we could see an updated version of the document rather than if we're saying that we're going to adopt the document now, but we're going to review it. I'm not sure when it's going to be reviewed or revisited. So I don't know if it requires an additional draft that has some additional wording in there or some additional clarification.
Mr. Chair, could that not be part of the motion? To have an amendment process in the future?
It could, yeah. I think that could be part of the motion.
Or, Mr. Chairman, if I could offer a suggestion for council to consider, council could just put in a line saying perhaps that there be created a register of wild populations, if I might turn it around, because that would be a shorter and simpler register. Anything else not on that register being accepted as cultivated. And you could even, if council wished, have the proposed changes or things to be added to that register have to go through council to maintain control over what is wild and known wild and what is not. That might do it. I shouldn't say it might. That might be a way to approach this if council wished.
I guess I have one question. several years ago, I was involved in a project involving seed banking in the United Kingdom, where various seeds of Caymanian plants were collected and stored underground in long-term conditions meant to last for hundreds of years. Do we know the status of Cayman sage in that seed bank? Did they collect seeds from what was then the wild population? Do we know?
I think we all thought that Cayman sage was extinct until it was rediscovered in 2007. And what I can't recall is whether we completed our seed banking exercise before or after 2007. So I could check on that. But in any event, we now have the ability to collect more seeds. If we haven't banked seeds with Q, then we can
Right.
put those.
And part B of my question was, is there any reason to believe that the captive population, so to speak now, is genetically any different than from the wild population from which the original seeds were collected? Has there been any horticultural manipulation?
As far as I'm aware, no. I don't know. John B., do we have Fred online? Or-
He is available if we want to
Yeah.
ask him to join the call, ma'am.
Yeah.
He will be available.
Okay. Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think so. I don't think there's been any manipulation of the stock. Simply been from seeds that were found.
Seeds to
Yeah.
seeds.
Mr. Chair,
Go
I
ahead.
have photographed Salvia caymanensis at Kew Gardens in London, where it's growing in cultivation.
Okay.
I think we are talking today about a species which we consider to be extinct, or very possibly extinct.
Yes.
I don't think the time for us to try to preserve it is tomorrow or the next day. I think if we need to act to try to encourage the cultivation of the species now for its preservation, because we have a habit in this country of putting things off until it's too late, and I would like to see it done while we still have the opportunity to do something about it. So I stand by my move to approve the plan.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Well, we could continue with the on straightforward vote and just count the ayes and the nays.
Through Mr. Chairman, would council want it to be the plan, but with the addition of register of known wild plants, or some other variation, or just the plan as written? Sorry. For council to decide what you want to vote on.
And I think your first suggestion of a register of wild plants would be a very short list, because I don't think the premise is that we don't know of any.
That's, yes, sir. I think it would probably just be the site where it was known to be from on the Queens Highway would be the only place that could be said to be a possible wild plants if they pop back up at this time that's known about.
Would the mover of them agree to amend the amended plan to include a registry of known wild sites? Frank? It was Frank, wasn't it?
Yes, it was
Yes,
Frank.
Frank moved it. Frank, Ian was asking whether, as the mover of the motion, you would be prepared to entertain an amendment to your motion that would include a provision to amend the amended plan as presented to council to include a provision that a register of wild populations be established.
My apologies. I actually can't hear him when he's speaking,
Ah,
so I didn't realize he was speaking to me.
okay.
I would have no objection to try to establish a register, but I don't know how we would do that if we consider the species to be extinct. So if, I mean, but I'm quite happy to yield on my position and say, yes, we could try to establish a register in order for us to get this done.
Okay.
John, could you summarize
How
an
are you going to
amendment?
establish something that you don't know anything about?
The amendment, the amendment to the motion would simply be to amend the draft conservation plan to include the addition of a registry of wild populations. Currently, just the Queens Highway
Discovery
Did-
site.
Discovery Site, thank you. Yes. Potential population of wild seeds that may pop back up, the Discovery Site. Mhm. And so this would just be a very minor change and addition that would be made to the draft conservation plan before it went forwards. Or easily written is what I mean by minor, sorry.
Are we voting on that?
No, I think we're waiting for Frank to agree to amend his motion, and then for that, if he
Yeah.
is in agreement for the seconder to
I thought he
also
had.
agree, and then we would vote. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I move that we accept the plan with the proposed amendment for the Salvia Cayman and Francis Conservation Management Plan.
And are you good with that as a seconder?
I second that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have to re-vote on it too.
Yeah.
I have a question for the representative from Department of Planning. Does this satisfy in part your concerns?
For you, Mr. Chair, certainly welcome. I
When is
appreciate the discussion and the willingness to accommodate my concerns. I think, again, I'll still go back to it. I would like to just see a redrafting, so I know that the definitions in there still have the scenarios where the plant is protected and the scenarios where the plant
Sorry, Mr. Lucille, somebody's talking. We'll get right back to you.
I don't think they can hear.
has those definitions where there's certain scenarios where the plant is protected and where it's not protected. And I think it just needs to be redrafted to kind of reflect the relationship to the register that we're now considering including. But I certainly appreciate the willingness to incorporate that.
Mr. Chair, are we still voting on the point?
Yes, Ms. Lucille, go ahead now.
Will the person from planning vote on?
I think try to summarize what Richard said, he still has reservations. I don't think he's voted, but I
Well,
suspect
can
he's
we
going to at
continue,
least
sir?
abstain.
Well,
We could, this motion could pass. with-
I thought his proposal was to have his mind at the position where he could vote on it. But he doesn't vote, right?
He has not yet been given the opportunity.
No, but he's a government member.
Sure.
Have you voted?
I'm going to have to abstain.
If we're voting, I vote in favor of the motion
Okay, thank you.
proposed, as proposed.
I'm in favor of the amended motion.
And I hear you.
Sorry, Ms. Lucille, did you say you can't hear?
I can't hear so well. I don't know if our ears are getting older or what.
Ian said that he voted in favor of the amended motion, so you could vote in favor of the amended motion or the original motion, or even both.
So, I think I voted in favor of the amended motion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll vote against the motion, but thank you.
Mr. Chair, just for clarity, I'm going to abstain because I've been
Thank you.
involved in the preparation of the documents.
And that leaves Tim, Brian.
Mr. Chair, Tim Austin, I will vote in favour of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we need to hear from Brian.
Mhm.
I would vote in favor of the amended motion.
Thank you, Brian.
And it would just be Patricia and Frank as mover and seconder if you all wanted to vote as well.
See if I should.
No, if Ms. Patricia and
Oh.
Mr. Frank as a mover and seconder wanted to, just in case their vote is different from,
No,
I
I
wanna
voted
assume
for
your
the
vote is
second,
because you
for
moved
the
the motion.
second,
Okay.
the amendment.
And I think that leaves Frank.
No, Mr. Crislow?
Sorry, I voted in favor of the amended motion.
He didn't already.
Thank
vote.
you.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Gotcha.
Okay, so we have everybody's vote?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the motion is carried. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the next thing on the agenda for council would just be noting that the proposed schedule of general meetings for next year would be the 26th of March, the 18th of June, the 10th of September, and the 3rd of December. Again, would be televised, would be from here televised out for the public to know what's going on. And I apologize, we'll try and make sure we have better microphones set up for that one. I apologize to all the members for this today.
So does that bring us to any other business?
Yes, I think it does. Mr. Chair, I'm going to have to recuse myself for
Yes.
any other business that's on the agenda. But before we get there, I just wanted to update council members on the situation with the beach erosion and the RFQ that we put out for technical assistance. Just to say that the RFQ closes on December the 13th at 11:30 p.m. Any questions on the RFQ close this Friday, the 6th, and we are hoping to have a decision on the selection of technical consultants for this project by the 20th of December. Don't know if anybody has any questions, but that's the update that I'm able to provide. So I'm just going to step out so you can deal with
Okay, thank you.
the other issue.
So, if you'd like, Mr. Chairman, through you, the last item is regarding a subdivision review on 108D74 on Cayman Brack. At its second October 2024 work group session, the council considered a request from the Department of Environment for the council to issue a Section 41 review of this application for subdivision. The director of the Department of Environment declared an interest in the issue and recused herself from both the department's consideration of the application and the council's consideration of the application. The council's delegation of authority that under which these reviews are normally done is for the Department of Environment to conduct Section 41 reviews on the council's behalf, and it is to the director as a member of the council. So with the director's recusal, the department could not issue the advice under delegated authority, and so reverted the decision to the council. This is just for clarity, this is a little different from when the director is out of office and there is formally an appointed acting director of the Department of Environment who can take action under the delegated authority. At the 2nd October meeting, council considered the department's review of the application as it was presented by Timothy Austin, the Deputy Director of the Department of Environment. Council considered the DOE's draft review letter, requested some changes to that, And then a motion was moved, seconded, and carried that the council adopt the review and issue it, signed by the chairman. So we'd like to bring to council just to ratify that decision. However, in addition to that, and I apologize, again, we're having some technical difficulties. I can't share all the documents with the members in-house as well as I can do it to the members online. The request for National Conservation Act Section 41.4 review of this proposal has now been received. It came in yesterday. DOE team reviewed it, and there is no material change to the proposal, and so no material change is recommended between what council's advice that has been issued is and what the 41.4 approval with directions would be. And so we'd like to put up for council to consider that the council today issue the consequent section 41.4 approval with directions. So basically take the council's previous decision, ratify that, but then also turn it into a 41.4 decision as well. And I believe that the Deputy Director, Tim Austin, can speak to it if council members want to discuss anything about this, sir.
Thank you.
John, I'm not hearing any questions, so if there's no further debate and through you, Mr. Chair, for consistency, given my involvement prior to this, I'd like to be the mover of this two-part motion and therefore put it forward, please.
Yes, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'm prepared to move this motion at this time for consistency, keeping myself involved. So yes, I would like to move this two-part motion and put it for a seconder and to the vote.
Thank you.
I seconded.
Thank you.
Steve Broadwell, I'll vote in favour.
Thank you.
In favor?
You.
I abstain, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Frank Rollstone, I vote in favor with the recommendations.
Thank you.
Abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lucille?
Sorry, I believe Ms. Lucille has had to drop off the call, it appears. Sorry.
We still have quorum.
Yes, sir, you are still quoted. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any votes against? I believe that motion carries.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I might add one final comment, thank you for the support of the motion. I think John may have mentioned it, as Steve pointed out, it's a little hard to hear on this side of the internet.
Yep.
But this is being done so that the applicant does not have to wait till the January meeting. So this is just an example of how the council goes above and beyond to try to expedite applications at every opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. If there's no other business, any member wish to bring any other business?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment which echoes your opening statement, and that is despite the council's agreement on nominations for protected areas, and putting forward conservation management plans for seabirds, turtles, and the sage. None of these recommendations, none of these motions will actually be put into effect without the approval of cabinet. And so the council is awaiting their approval to these,
Urgently.
in some cases, multi-year-old requests for approval.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Chair, I would just like to thank council members for their attention to all the matters that have come before them this year. And as everybody has said, it's been quite a challenging year. And yeah, to thank you for your support for the Department of Environment and us getting our jobs done. And I look forward to us trying to move some of these issues forward next year. Everybody have a great holiday season.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to say, Mr. Chairman, that I hope the public realizes that there are only two conservation organizations officially in this country, the National Trust and the NCC, protecting the natural world and plants and animals and habitats. And it is very important that what the work we put in is accepted and passed and taken through. Otherwise, these species, for example, boobies, we will lose them because our plan is not being carried through. So I would urge the public to support us in this.
Okay, well, if no other member has anything else to add, I'd like to call the meeting as adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays when they come.
Same to you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Worked okay?
Rounds of public consultation agreeing the specific provisions of the National Conservation Act, which passed unanimously in 2013. The Act establishes the National Conservation Council that was created to promote and secure biological diversity and the sustainable use of natural resources in the Cayman Islands. Many in our community feel directly the continuing loss of Cayman's natural heritage and are growing increasingly concerned that our native habitats and unique plants and animals will not be known by the generations that follow us. At present, the Act provides the only legal means of giving effect to the constitutionally protected principles of sustainability, whereby social, economic, and environmental perspectives have equal weight at the table. The National Conservation Council has a mandate to ensure that we can continue to enjoy the magic of Cayman's biodiversity for many generations to come. But to be successful, we all must work together as a community to build and preserve the Cayman that we want and wish for our children to inherit.
Our climate is changing, and so is Cayman. Stronger and more frequent hurricanes, longer periods of drought, sea level rise, and higher temperatures are already impacting our communities, livelihoods, and our security. While we alone can't prevent the changing climate or natural disasters, we can act locally to minimize the impact to our communities. If we take nature into account before we act, we can harness nature's benefits and reduce the devastation caused by natural disasters. Cayman is partnering with the UK government to identify solutions to reduce the risks of flooding from storms, improve the ability of our lands and seas to bounce back after disasters and make them healthier, and to use the strength of nature to fortify the coastline and protect the landscape around our homes. We are nurtured by nature, because when we put nature front and center, nature can provide the solutions.
These small islands never had large mammal predators until we brought them here. So these animals have evolved in an environment where mammalian predators didn't exist. The rock iguanas here were the largest native land animals. So once they grow up to being a full-grown iguana, they had nothing they needed to worry about in terms of predators. All they had to worry about was each other. The brown boobies on Cayman brack, before humans came here, could nest all over the Lighthouse Trail, but they are now so scarce that it's really questionable whether that population can survive on the brack. And we're going to lose that if we don't do something about this.
The wildlife found on the sister islands is incredibly threatened, and it's continuing to decline. One of the key reasons for this decline is the impact of invasive species, in particular through predation of feral cats, predation from rodents, and they will predate on eggs and chicks of seabirds and also native birds that are found on islands. So we pulled together a partnership between the Department of Environment, the Department of Agriculture, and we brought in the University of Aberdeen, the National Trust, along with the RSPB. What we want to do is really support the community, understand their opinions and viewpoints so that we can really help protect the sister islands from the impacts of invasive species.
Our rich and diverse natural environment is one of our most important assets. Our clear turquoise waters, vibrant reefs and white sand beaches attract visitors to our shores every year. Our dry forests provide refuge for wildlife and revitalize our soil, but our islands provide us with so much more than that. These same natural assets can also protect us from disasters. Strong coral reefs are our first line of defense against intense storm waves. Healthy seagrass beds and mangrove forests slow down powerful waves, protect the coast, and provide a nursery for the sea creatures we depend on. Native coastal plants, like mangroves and sea grape trees, fortify our coastline and reduce the risk of erosion and flooding from storms, while our native forests stimulate our rain cycles and help to control inland flooding. From ridge to reef, we are nurtured by nature. Stop, take a picture, breathe it all in. Our incredible Cayman Islands are home to everything we love. We need to protect their natural bounty so they can continue to protect us. Cayman is partnering with the UK governments to better understand how nature can keep our communities safe and create new opportunities for jobs and livelihoods. Economic resilience requires environmental resilience.